Okay, so for those people I haven't had the pleasure of playing with in the last 2 days, my name is Lisa. I'm currently working at Cal State East Bay and at San Jose State, and really loving being a field supervisor and coming from years of working with teachers and working with educators in different settings and teaching artists and being a professor and being a teacher. So I really love that the good and the bad news is we're needed. That's as succinctly as I can put it. Love what we do and want to get better at it and just thinking about it in this moment. So that's what we're discussing today, holistic approaches. Before we get on, let's have a look at an agenda. And the reason I did this is I like to model when I'm with my student teachers, and I wanted to model with us. So we're going to name our land, we're going to call out some norms, we're going to define a couple terms, we're going to look at some frameworks, we're going to think about how to use the arts and their standards, and we're going to consider how the State of California Department of Education looks at the whole child as well, and then look at our own parts of places we might be able to start with that. I would also like to suggest that working in a holistic way is familiar to all of us and leads to social justice, DEI, all the things we want, you know, sustainable, critical, and cultural responsive pedagogies. The school I work at in Hayward, which is the one closest to me, the one I included, is the Ohlone and the Chocheño and Carcan Indians. I'm in San Francisco, and I put in a few links here because I think that if you're going to talk about the land, then what are you going to do about it? So the link at the top is if you'd like more information or you'd like to donate, and then I can explain why. We're down to about 500, and we had been at 2,000 Ramaytush Indians prior to California becoming a state. We are now at about 500, and Ohlone means, you can read it yourself, a group of indigenous people who lived in coastal California. So that's San Francisco to San Pablo Bays and Point Sur east to the Coast Ranges. Unfortunately, the Ohlone who were not impacted by the Spanish, were not impacted by disease, were impacted by us becoming a state, and then by orders of the government were massacred where possible. And really that language was around genocide. And that's the level that we're talking about. And because of all of that, the Ohlone are still lobbying a century later to get recognition. And when I was reading about this, what I learned was some people think recognition means we get a casino. That is not the case. What recognition that they're looking for and what they want is to be able to be sovereign in how they govern health, education, and revitalization. That's a very expensive process. It requires a lot of historical documentation. And as you can imagine, those records may not have been kept really well. So they're really in a battle to get there. That's what they're up against. That's the link. And I am thankful to be on this unceded land. We're moving on. Norms for today. Okay, everybody's had a big day. You just had lunch. Can we stretch? Sit in your chair, stand by your computer, do your thing. Let me see a hand and arm. I can see an ear wiggling. I'll take it. I'll take it. So we're just doing that. And we're also going to just do this little thing that's happened in the last couple of years, including our pronouns. If anybody doesn't know how to, but would like, oh, hello, Kitty, but would like to, I'd love to go back a slide. I think I did the right thing. Hello. But you'd like to, but you don't know where they go. It's at the top of your right corner of your screen where you have your 3 dots. It gives you a drop down and it gives you the option to rename yourself. So should you care to in the future, should you care to today, that didn't come in an email to the world, so I thought I'd just share. That's how you do it. And you would rename yourself with the pronouns you're comfortable with. She, hers, they, them, he, his, some combination that works for you. That's that. Okay, we're going to take questions and comments in the chat, and I'm very lucky to have Andrew with me, so he'll he'll help me vet as we go. And as we would in a classroom, again, modeling as I would, we're going to be, and today I'm stating them rather than co-creating them based on time. So we'll be respectful of the people speaking and those waiting to speak. And as was said to us in another session, if our questions don't get answered in this moment, I'm happy to answer your questions. I will find you, you will find me, my email's at the end of this. And I'm happy to address anything. And I find when I go to conferences, there's a lot of pressure to walk away with a lot of actionable things. And my suspicion is I usually walk away with 2 or 3 little things. So we're going to continue this conversation. And I hope you've had as much joy in learning as I've had in the last couple days. To set us up, I just wanted to share that the teacher training for Cal State teachers invites and names these things. They want it to be culturally sustained, equity driven, justice focused pedagogies. So we're already been given permission to play in all of these things, and we didn't need permission, but if you need a backup with your administration, it's there. All of these things also reflect holistic education. And so over the last 2 days, these are the words we've heard, these are the phrases. I've put them in alphabetical order just so they're less overwhelming. But everything listed here that I've heard in the sessions I've been in and read about in the sessions I couldn't attend speak to holistic education. So it's like arts integration. It's not something you're not doing. It's a question of whether or not you have language for it. And you're able to name it with your teacher candidates so that they can articulate that, name it, and own it in their own work. So in holistic education, we have, let me just get rid of that. Thank you. Embedded in it is diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And why is that? Because of these 3 points. It's multimodal. And if anybody would like to work with me here, pitch in, see if you'd like to read one of these and out loud, one of the multimodals. Would anybody be kind enough to clamor in? Or Andrew and I are going to riff off each other and just go back and forth. We could do it like that. Let's do it like that, Andrew. How's that?
Sounds good. I can start. More kinds of learners.
More spaces for equity.
More points of connections.
More options for inclusion.
And more variations in assessment.
Great. I love making that list because it helps me think in different parts of my brain. They sound similar and they are not. And so it's great to distinguish them. Number 2 is a problem-solving mindset. We've had a lot of conversation about mindsets, and this is inherently part of holistic education. The 4 C's you all know, right? Communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Cultural inclusion. I consider the 5th, and project-based learning speaks to all of that, as does all of the teaching we're trying to do. So holistic education can often be project-based learning. And that's the problem. Thank you.
Oh.
So that would be to identify a problem, develop possible solutions, and take a course of action. And what we know in that problem-solving mindset is revision is always present. So again, that's something we're trying to reincorporate into learning and coming away from the right answer the first time. Holistic education also leaves us with improved emotional intelligence. And that is accomplished through peer engagement and enhanced learning environments. I think of that as learning stations, as well as identifying your classroom in a different way, as well as an enhanced learning environment is some of the things we've been talking about. You greet your kids when you come in. They know where their materials are. They have different materials to accomplish different tasks there, and that's all part of it too. I'll take a couple questions in a mo. Let me just mention why I think we're where we are in this conversation is this 2 days has been about the explicitness of what's required of us right now. We were taught differently. we learned differently. Some of us taught ourselves differently. And without this notion of explicitness, which our wonderful keynote speaker spoke to and lived in so beautifully this morning, we're not going to get where we're trying to go. So this is an invitation to be explicit in our work, more than I think we think is useful. We're not being redundant. It's really our administrations need to know. They need to see the connections. Our student teachers need to see the connections so they can keep on this trajectory. Alrighty, so explicitly muscles for social justice, things we've taken for granted, things we participate in intuitively that we need to start naming. These safe and trusting environments, both for students and teacher candidates. So we need to model that with my offer to you is we need to model that with teacher candidates. And that just like we heard in other sessions, this idea of engaging teacher candidates in their critical thinking to develop these experiential activities that will tie directly to learning goals. And that's what makes me think of project-based learning. We know that we want to be including all learners. And so we need to be able to do experiential things. And we know the art standards are right there for us to help us do that. That happens to be my history. So if anybody wants any guidance about that in the future, please feel free to reach out. Arts integration specialist is one of my titles, and work I've done a lot in a lot of different spaces. So I love it and I'm happy to share it. Araceli Martinez, she may be somebody I went to USF with when we were doing our doctorates. That would be fun. Right, so we've also heard a lot this weekend about including students, co-leading with them, handing it off to them. That notion of facilitation and in their own space, also holistic education and social justice. The piece I'm really interested in for all of us also is self-care and us doing that so that we can pass that on to teacher candidates so that they can sustain themselves in this career. In this moment in this career, there isn't enough support out there. So we need all of that for ourselves and for them. And then building in consistent time. We've talked about this a lot the last couple of days. Consistent time for reflection and revision. Demonstrations of understanding throughout the school year, coming away from just tests, just this at the end of a unit. And that can happen across content. And again, happy to help with that. Nobody is not familiar with this. I share it with you in this moment simply to say those 5 in the middle, the 2 that are orange, 2 green, 1 yellow, we're all aware of this and it reflects both social justice and holistic education. So there are tools out there for you to lean on as you help your teacher candidates. They're all there, I wish. They are out there and we have to find them and collate them in a way that works for whomever we're serving. So this is the part where I'd love to hear from you. We've talked about this a lot, beginning with our teacher candidates, where what they're using is working, their strength or how they default that is working positively for them. Would anybody care to share in the chat or raise your paw and let us know what you have found, especially in these last 2 years, that have helped you communicate to people and be able to relate to them in a way that they're able to keep learning with you in the crazy that's been the last 2 years. Has anybody found something they care to share with the group that they've, I can't, there's chat. Wow. 23, and I bet all those chats say, I can't hear that nice lady. Yes, Nicole, arts integration. Okay. Anything I need to know about above that? Andrew, I'm not reading that as it's coming. I'm reading backwards right now. Okay. So,
oh, now we've got stuff coming in.
There we go. Integrating play-centered learning because it builds equity principles. Yes. Nicole, would you like to speak to that for a second? Because what I what I think people hear when they first hear play is younger people. And what we know is it's not just younger people, right? Like it's everybody.
Well, the first thing I say is the opposite of play is not work, it's depression. There's so much evidence that well-balanced teens from all parts of the world are healthy when they've engaged in lots of kinds of play, not as in drama play on a stage, but everything from risky play to construction play, imaginative play, social emotional play, and symbolic. And there's even math play, universal language, universally we play with numbers. And then there's language play, rap, nonsense, gibberish. And so in the classroom, I can help with this because I have a giant triple wheel of play with 8 forms of arts in the center and then 8 forms of play in the next rotating wheel. And the outer one has the kinds of equity principles that are built through play, like embracing tension or building bridges. And flipping the script, like Hamilton is the musical is an example of flipping the script. Anyways, the more playful it is, and also humor, the more we're addressing student languages and cultures. Thanks.
Yes, humor, key to survival. Thank you, Nicole. That helps clarify for me some things about the depth and the explicitness, and I love that you're putting it on the wall and people can see it and they can see the connections and they can make their own connections and they can express across arts. You don't get trapped. If someone hands you clay, you're not a sculptor for the next 9 months, right? Like you can come through methods and you can try new methods. Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Anybody else care to share? Oh, here we go. Building a habit of mathematical strengths. Andrew, would you like to say more about that?
Sure. So in our program at UC Davis, we spend a lot of time talking about reflecting on math identities. And so one of the habits that I ask about with every teacher candidate is, what mathematical strengths did you acknowledge in your students today? And building that habit of acknowledging the strengths, noting specifically what students are doing that's mathematically smart, and then, later on seeing teacher candidates say to me, I said this to this student, and now I've noticed that they're just way more engaged. So just seeing those small little treasures that come out of this small action that a teacher can make. I don't want to claim that this is like an answer to any of the systemic problems that are going on, but I do think that it's a positive move, especially in math education.
Am I hearing you right? Would it be fair to say that from that, sometimes people take confidence in their own identities and feel they can build on them because they've been named?
Absolutely. I mean, okay.
That's very
idea
useful.
is that, yeah, everyone has mathematical strengths that just sometimes aren't acknowledged in the classroom, and that's kind of a disservice. I mean, it's not kind of, it is a disservice. So
thank you.
We're working to change that.
Awesome. All righty. And now I am attempting to go forward in my slides. Oh, come on, what's happening? Here we go. So, design thinking tools for review. This is not universal design thinking. This is design thinking as in project management kind of design thinking. And I put them in order you might like them. And I just wanted to describe one that I find useful. And the reason I like these is they make whatever you've just done objective. They have criteria, they have parameters. They were met or they weren't. And so I think when we're learning critical thinking techniques to share with our student teachers, for them to hear us, and then we offer them things to share with their students. A lot of Project Zero, which is the graduate school at Harvard, their School of Education, they do a lot of fun thinking routines around this as well. I like these from a project management base as you start to work with older students, as well as young students. So lessons learned, the last one right above the art standards is one that looks like an axis. It's just, it's that. And so what those two lines represent is, one is what we planned, what we didn't plan. Right? There's something that occurred. We had a plan. That wasn't what we planned. And another one, which is what we learned. Right? What did we learn? What is that trajectory as well? And then they're simply overlapped on a 90-degree angle, right? And so those two lines allow you to fill in data around an experience that isn't checking boxes. It requires that you think about it because you're going to have to put it somewhere on a line. So it immediately invites critical thinking, and it asks two questions: what we planned and what we learned. And that I have found to be a place where people can open up without feeling judged about what happened, as we build skills about hearing critical thinking without having to resist. So that's what I just wanted to share those with you. They'll also be in the resources, as well as standards. The reason I put standards and not just arts is, in arts integration, what can happen is it's a rainy day and somebody has crayons. That is not art. And so please, I beg you, as you use art, it can be a standard, you know, because all of us know standards in the arts, even if we're not artists. So just hold them together, whatever your, whatever standard it is you're shooting for. This scary diagram I wanted to share with you because I find it visually slightly overwhelming, and I think that reflects and is a metaphor for where we all are. So this is the California Department of Education's version of the whole child, right? Of whole student learning. And what I wanted to, without having to go through all of that, if you're feeling visually overwhelmed by it, the state's named priorities are student achievement, student engagement, and student climate, meaning the environments in which they're learning. So again, we come back to social justice, holistic education. So this is another document, another opportunity to see where tools are there for you and bridges have been articulated for you. Okay, can holistic education connect to your work as a field supervisor? Was there anything in there that you do, that you're curious about, that you've seen a gap with, that you'd like more information about? Anybody there? Mr. Andrew, counting on you in this moment, please, sir. I mean, the reason I chose this is because I'm finding it a really lovely basket to land the questions I have for myself in as a field supervisor. I feel like there are answers for me here. And that is why I wanted to share it. Anybody? A tool?
I'll let you know if something pops up in the chat.
Thank you. I actually think I've been remiss in giving you just a very brief history, which is the notion of holistic education became sort of common parlance in the 1980s as a response to the way education was swinging in terms of its mechanistic and standardized testing approach. So that's where this conversation came out of, is how do we get back to talking about our whole beings? And I think what we've learned in the last 2.5 years is, as educators, we have this space of people who teach social emotional learning quite explicitly. I think we all know that. I don't know that parents were understanding it the way they do now. And so it's a strong moment for us to own the social emotional learning piece, push on it, look for the bridges that have been built for us to do so. And same with holistic education, the whole child, because without the whole child, we're not having social justice, just not happening. I think this is the part where Johnny said I'm supposed to be okay with quiet.
Nicole has something in the chat.
Madam.
Oh, it's just a reference. No worries.
Oh, Okay, thank you. Oh, you put in the thinking routines? Is that you? Thank you. Amy Huang, I wish I knew more about supporting trauma. Great. In the resources, I have left you some trauma-informed practices and a book that I enjoy. Enjoy is strong and the wrong word, that I find useful to this conversation. And happy to share that with you, Amy. And it's there in the resources as well, but I'll add more.
Thank you, Lisa.
Sure.
Do you, and I'm sorry, I can't seem to turn my video on today. My computer's a little bit acting up.
Oh, it had a conversation with mine, apparently. That's a
I
shame.
think
I'm
it
so
did.
sorry.
I think they're good friends. But I specifically am really wondering about, you know, there's so many like forms of trauma, you know, like, so something like, you know, something more long-term, like a complex trauma. But I'm also really wondering if you have resources on pandemic trauma.
Right.
You
Yes.
know?
And I really appreciate you making that distinction,
Mm-hmm.
because I think, unfortunately, what's part of what I've read is some people are okay with having trauma. Some people are in trauma denial. Some people feel like, it, you know, I got through it, so I don't get to have it, like survivor's guilt. So there are many layers to this notion. And I appreciate you also mentioning the notion of a long-term trauma, but something that was prior to that, that continues to invade your thinking and possibly your choices.
Yeah. And of course, there's like generational trauma too, you know.
Right.
That gets
And then
passed on. But I think like, right, I see a lot of my candidates potentially, you know, experiencing like they seem to be exhibiting symptoms of, you know, pandemic trauma, or their students are exhibiting some symptoms of pandemic trauma. And I just, you know, I don't quite have the background for that. And I'm wondering what we can do at least to help support that.
Thank you. I will address my next resources that I put into that, into our folder, to that specifically. I think what I also read in part is that, and I think this is intuitive for us, you become a teacher because you're going to help. You're going to become a teacher because you want to participate in this child's growth and knowing. And in the last 2 years, our candidates have walked into situations where students are in different buildings. They are now in puberty. They now have lockers. They now theoretically have autonomy, but don't. They grew up in social media. So they may or may not have been hanging out with their friends anyway. So the layering of their trauma is smacking our candidates. And I think part of them didn't realize that was going to happen. They thought they could help, but the hurt is pretty entrenched and deep at this point.
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts for kids.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the social media, because I know that a lot of I can't say a lot. I know that you know, for myself personally, like half of my candidates didn't know what to do about TikTok and all those TikTok challenges.
Right.
And they were feeling so unsafe with those challenges.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because the TikTok specifically, I'd lift my hair if it wasn't in a bun over my head like a 4-year-old right now, right? That's a tricky one, because which agendas do you allow to push on you? And this is the other piece of what we've been talking about this weekend, is being a teacher. There are a lot of agendas coming for you, and how do you strengthen yourself, not only through self-care, but through advocacy, to deal with that wave of administration and parents and community and students and testing and then all the things. So I will look to that, to include that as well. Thank you. I love good homework. I love my job. right? Like it's the best homework.
Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about generational trauma, pandemic trauma, social media interaction through trauma, with trauma around students in the settings of schools and outside, but just for K-12 age people. Anybody else want something else in my homework? Trauma around.
Jane has a comment. I don't know if it's necessarily a homework assignment, but she has something to say in the chat.
Yes.
Do you want me to read it out loud?
I'm reading it,
Oh.
but yes, if you would share it, that would help the group.
Yeah, sure. I believe, as I'm sure many of us have noticed, a great need that we should consider our pre-service candidates' social and emotional wellness in the field supervision we do. That it is important to support them as a whole person and not just as students or teachers.
Yes, amen. Because yes, that is what's required. And so that's why this language about being explicit about social emotional learning, about holistic education, around social justice, diversity, inclusion, all the things have to be front and center on the table for us to accomplish this notion of supporting their emotional wellness. Yeah, agree, old agree. Okay, I shall move slides, assuming I can. There we go. So in the holistic teaching world, this is what the offer is. And there is not one formal definition of holistic education. It came out of a number of conversations with a number of colleagues, and it, depending on whose reading you're reading, it commonly has a spiritual component that can also be seen as love for the planet, right? So that holistic as in the world we live in as well. So this list here deals with things we are dealing with, which is why I think it's a useful tool for us at this time. I put self next to emotional, but clearly it's everybody. But I think we've also talked these couple of days about needing to start with yourself, checking yourself. How do you come to a situation? How do you come to a meeting? Are you already perturbed? All of those things. That how do we check ourselves and know where we are in our learning and in our own bodies? And that's why I put self, but clearly it's everybody. Right. And so the ethical values, the third one down, which I did note includes the physical world, is also everything else we work to do. All the inclusion we work to do, all the justice we want to be part of and help promote. Okay. Good. And then more explicitly, because repetition can be good, modeling what I do in a class. If I can get this to switch. That's a different way to think about it that might be more visually easy to digest for you. And that's one way of dealing with different learners is you may even use a similar format like text, but one is formatted differently. So if you need it to be very concise, it's self-care, students, school community, and learning. Got you. So I like being able to mix it up. This also leads to advocacy. So if self-care begins with you, and students, we're helping to skill grow. And in community, we're growing partnerships. It is my personal belief we need to be explicit that in our learning, that is part of our advocacy. What are we learning? Why are we learning it? Why are we focusing on particular things? And I think that has to do with something that was mentioned over the last couple of days, is that the world of a teacher, and where the theory meets the road, the world of a teacher is not always gone over thoroughly. And so that notion of advocacy is important. Being mindful of time. This is one way For those of us who are visual learners, you might think about, how would I differently address my day? Or how would I help my student teacher address how they prepare in this moment, in this time? And I'm not saying these pie slices are right. I'm just suggesting that they're elements, and I can add other elements. And if anybody sees I'm missing an element, Andrew would be happy to tell me about it. But we were talking about how you enter the room, how they enter the room, and how you check in with them. Whether you're locking eyes, shaking hands, doing your little handshake at the door, whatever your jam is with your students, how are you having a moment to then come to warm-ups in community, right? Like, it's gradual. So there's the entering, there's the warm-ups in community building, there's your content, which are theoretically engaged activities, and engaged is a subjective term, and reflection. That's the piece we're adding now that has to be explicit, because we know it's where the critical thinking happens. And it's also us practicing revision. Without the reflection, we can't get revision. And without revision, we can't get away from having the one right answer. That is my fear for us all. Okay, that's that. So I broke those down smaller, just for fun, as an exercise when you enter the classrooms. When I'm talking to someone who's not been in a classroom before, and before they've had their first experiences in this role rather than as a student, we're thinking together about how is your room set up? Are they going to have to move 20 chairs after classes started? Or do we have a routine for that? What is sound? Are you trying to start a tone? Do you need Ella that day? How is that starting for you? Are the materials set out? And I know we've all spent too much time with Ziploc bags and making little things. I know we have. And plastic baskets with stuff that goes in the middle of the, right? We do that. But what are our systems for doing that? And how do we employ the students in helping us to do that? Okay, you're on colored pencils this week. Get it, let's go, right? Like, you can map that out with your students so that you have taken down the work for yourself, you have delegated it to them, they then become responsible to the whole in that little way. And again, we're talking about social justice, we're talking about whole child, we're talking about explicitly tending. Okay, what's your meet and greet? And then place yourself as facilitator. And I say facilitator and not instructor, as we try to work towards this paradigm shift. When I went to school, it was this. I tried to write really fast. I tried to remember all of that. And in this shift where we give up power, but we gain community and knowledge and deepen our knowing, that takes trust and practice. And so calling them facilitators in my world is useful to me. I don't know how it works in yours, and I look forward to asking you that when we get to the end. Okay, and then one of the other slices was warm-ups in community. This is something else I do with student teachers. We do something this is my suggestion as a possible format. Do something physical. That's simply coming through the door, if that's what it needs to be with those kids that day. You're reviewing an agenda. Nobody likes to get caught out. People who like to think ahead, and people who need to look at it 6 times need the agenda to look at it 6 times. There's no good, I can't think of a reason one wouldn't want that. And it gives you a chance to establish some vocabulary words within the agenda. Next, you're doing vocal things. Whether you're pair sharing, whether you're practicing something, whether you are literally doing voice work, or you're taking questions. They have now moved their bodies and they have now spoken and they've heard what's coming. Brill. Enjoy your activities, whether that's some sharing out, some content, something physical. And then referring to the function of that in your day's learnings, reviewing with them, why did we do that? How did that help us? Did that help us, right? And you employing the vocabulary as you do so. And you can repeat that 2 or 3 times. What I find common in teacher candidates, and I'm guilty of the same, I got a list of 17 things I'm gonna do that day. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna be 17 things. So that's that. And
Lisa,
yes, sir.
sorry, Nicole was wondering if you will be sharing one of your physical or sound vocal warm-ups or community building activities.
Well, for her, yes. No, I'm not saying that. I'm looking to see what I've built in here. I think it's a collective review today, Nicole. Nicole, I almost called you Michelle. For time reasons, and we'll see what we can do real quick because we have 14 minutes. Dun, 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 we can get it done. So yes, Nicole, we'll think out loud together about that. Okay. Then this was, I think the reflection piece is, as we've all discussed, huge. Is there anything in this list that I've missed of what we might want to reflect on? Or how we might like to ask? Andrew, should you and I parlay through this one? Do you mind?
Not at all. Let's do it.
Okay.
Review co-built rules of engagement. How did we do?
Okay. Review a day's agenda by item, asking for questions or comments.
Ask for connections they experienced connected to learning goals.
Ask for suggestions for possible activities to connect to learning goals.
Remind them of their growth.
Remind them of their prep for next time.
And remind them of their growth.
Yes. And I love that that came up this weekend, that positive reinforcement is not necessarily a bad thing. And depending on where you hang out, in what districts you're in, what teachers you work with, it's interesting that it's still a conversation, but sometimes it is. So I was thankful lots of people did that. Okay, here we go. This might be our moment, Nicole, I don't know. So teaching life, how would people answer this? This was actually going to be, it was going to be a verbal interaction. It was going to be this, like how do you guys, could you write in the chat, please? Which of these takes the most for you, or which one do you enjoy the most? I enjoy this one. This one makes me crazy. You forgot this one, the red one. Where is that? If you could throw any of that at Andrew, that will allow us to have a little exchange. And maybe we can do a physical fight of that.
Amy says self-care.
Brilliant. As something you want more of, or you enjoy, or like many people, you give it lip service, but can't even get your nail polish off. It's like, I can't even get in a hot shower. I don't even know what it means. What is self-care?
Jennifer says, I enjoy reflection and need to remember to do more self-care. Nicole enjoys getting out into the community within a learning goal.
Awesome. That's an interesting way to phrase that. Well, I think one of the things I notice about this time, someone had mentioned self-care. I think he's just said the wanting to be better about it, or reflection, excuse me, it was the reflection piece, is figuring out how many ways there are to reflect. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I was pretty, I wouldn't say inflexible, I would just say not educated about different ways to reflect. And I've appreciated this time to expand my doodling, to sing old songs, to write new lyrics to old songs, like there's a lot of ways to reflect. My poor cats will tell you about the songs. But sometimes I can work through a problem if I have to think up the words to a song about it. I'm more Cole Porter than baby anybody, but you know, it's an age thing. Okay, both, I think we need more of that. Ooh. Yes, ways to, it's not always after the content, but how generative theme for the content. Absolutely. So the notion of reflection is ongoing, right? It's not, it's formative, not necessarily solely summative. We want to be doing it ongoingly so that we know if we've made a wrong turn. Okay, so I think I'm hearing self-advocacy gets to live in here. Oh, so sorry. Self-advocate. Hello, kitty. What's happening? There. I think what we're learning is self-advocacy is going to go here. I'm going to talk a little bit about advocacy because I don't know in what class my students are getting that. And so I feel it was interesting. People were saying, our keynote speaker this morning was talking about, well, you know, I kind of had to do it on the side or on the DL or, you know, backdoor it somehow. And that's how I feel about talking about advocacy. How silly is that? So let's go there. I can get out of here. Okay. This was also another opportunity for engagement with you guys today. These are things I suggest to my student teachers, that while you're building your professional community, you think about your values. And the reason I say that is it can be very shiny. There's lots of shiny, sparkly things the first year or two that you want to get involved with. And there's only so much bandwidth you have. So I suggest to them that they be very thoughtful and less is more, and add something else the next year. And that they come clean with themselves about what they want from the job and what they're willing to give the job. And that doesn't suggest by any means there aren't boundaries. That's exactly not that. That is, what will I give the job? What will I not give the job? Sunday nights, so whatever it is for you. And I think the education statement is really helpful when they go to look for a job. Where do they want to work? What communities do they want to work in? What climates do they want to work in? As well as it just distills your theory. Having to have an educational statement distills your theory. And I'm sure they've had to write one for some class. These next two things I find to be very different based on who you are dispositionally. You can have an idea and want to build and invite people to build with you. When you're starting out, what I suggest to people is that they join another boat. They don't have to start the armada. They can learn the ropes of how it works in a school or in that community. They can get to know their colleagues so that when they're ready to start inviting, they have a sense of who's on the team. So that's a suggestion I make. Because sometimes if you're not the person who wants to join another group, you have to think through the goal of it to be willing to. And then I love the idea that we're inviting them to have partnerships and investigations larger than where they are right now. I mean, I think why we enjoy the thinking of people around the world is people thought it a grade, a school, a community, a state, a nation, and a planet level. And that's important. And they are these people. They are going to be those people. Right now, they're covered in glitter. If they have to see a short pair of scissors again, they're going to stab somebody with them. It's a little overwhelming. But as they come into the profession, they will be doing and finding their feet. And what do they want out of it? What do they want out of it? So much fun to think about. So that, and you've got to do that starting now. My point is start now. Pick one, start now, and then grow your tree. But I watch people get overwhelmed when they get to new communities if there isn't a good onboarding system and a pairing system. It's a little bit of self-care. This came from a trauma stewardship book. So would anybody like to vote as to which kinds of trauma this could be useful for? Would anybody care to drop that in the chat or raise a hand and just say this relates for you or aligns with you with, we talked about intergenerational, historical, pandemic, we named, I think, another flavor as well. There's also health issues. There's all kinds of ways to need support around events. And I like this idea of active and passive, right? You can read a book. You don't have to be on Broadway. It's okay. And hey, who of us doesn't need to look more closely at healthy lifestyles? My caffeine drinking friends. Let's, you know. So that is in the resources, but I'll add more.
And there are a few things in the chat here, Lisa.
Ooh, yay, joy rapture. What shall we address?
Well, Amy says that she can see connections to many types of trauma, and then Nicole was commenting, I think, on a previous point that you made. I've also seen a big need for student teachers and interns for advocacy and building community for Black educators alone in a school or with no structured opportunity to meet with or collaborate with other Black educators at their school. And then paired with that is finding white and BIPOC allies within their schools.
That's so interesting because we have heard conversations about people who have affinity groups in the schools that they go to. And it would be useful to us to think about affinity groups for our teacher candidates. So they're not only is to pursue their own thoughts and their own comfort and their own sense of belonging, but also for them to understand what kids are going through when they join an affinity group, the questions they may have. So yeah, very useful to all parties. Yeah, and I agree, Amy, it speaks to a lot of kinds of trauma, and I will try to distill out some more for us in what I leave. We have 2 minutes, my friends. And that is why they were talking exchanges, Nicole, not so much drink, because this just feels like a huge amount of sharing. So I read self-care and I wrote it in lots of languages, and I did that on purpose. And one of them is Ukrainian. And I do this because we speak back to what is inclusion, and there's a lot of information we've gathered over the last 2 days. And I am a big fan of hearing other languages in classes personally. That's just me. My own history is I spent a lot of years making sung stories with kids. And so a chorus of another language is always beautiful, right? A statement or a repeat or a call, and, you know, all of it, it makes space for more than one language, invites that and supports kids. And then you get a kid ambassador, talk to them about what it's like in that, like, can you hook me up with, I need this translated, and can you teach those 8 children? Thank you. Yeah, so that was just about 10 years with the San Francisco Opera in their teacher education department, and it just was such a joy. Self-care, just reminding us. Very hard to listen to you, even though we were locked at home for a while. Still many voices. Yeah. So how do we help them stop in a moment when they're feeling overwhelmed in a classroom? Because that's real. Okie doke. Casi finito. Oh, okay, let's go. Next. All righty. Oh, yay, joy rapture. So, it has been an incredible 2 days. Thank you all. Thank you all. I am humbled. I am hungry to learn more, and I am thankful for your company. And I look forward to seeing you all somewhere soon, I hope. Please take my email. Happy to continue to chat.